Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pleasure to have another session of this meetup. So the Agile Enterprise Agile meetup is uh, basically a series of presentation. We will invite colleagues on different topics and they will present. This meetup is very well sponsored and very well supported. This particular Zoom meetings that we have is sponsored and supported by San Jose State University, and I am a faculty member at San Jose State University. So, Gopal, I would probably ask you if you kindly introduce the speaker for today's session, and also if you would like to have some words about this meetup and also any other announcements that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. So quick word about the meetup. So we got started probably about 3 or 4 years ago in the San Francisco Bay Area, the heart of the Silicon Valley. And we have been growing quite a bit. And when the pandemic hit us last year, we went all virtual. We used to be meeting in person in San Francisco Bay Area, but we went all virtual last year, early last year, and we have stuck with that format. And that made us expand into a much broader audience. And there is a thirst and appetite for what our focus is from a meetup perspective. We are more than 1,500 people globally in terms of membership, and we do at least one presentation, interactive session with the community a month. Some months we do usually more than one. We went global as well. So instead of Enterprise San Francisco, we used to be called Enterprise Agile San Francisco. Now we are called Enterprise Agile Global, aligned with what we do as well. So this month, we are honored to have Chris as our speaker. So Chris is also known as the virtual Agile coach. He is from UK, and I want to thank Chris staying up in the evening hours doing this meetup. This is a hot topic. He's going to talk about innovation games in an enterprise agile environment. But before he gets started, I just want to say a couple of words about Chris. He's a transformation leader, enterprise agile coach. He's been working in the agile community across multiple enterprises for more than a decade. He focuses on customer and user centricity, and he has got an amazing personality, amazing speaker. So this is going to be a treat for all of us in terms of Chris. And one of the big things about Chris that you need to know is that whenever he gets into a job, he wants to make his job redundant. That's what his focus has been for many, many years. So that's the core of the Agile principle. So I'm looking forward to this. And he focuses on learning. He never wants to have failure in the vocabulary. So at this point, Chris, please take it away. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us here today.
It's an absolute pleasure. And don't worry, it's not too late. It's only 8 p.m. my time. So it's not like I'm staying up to silly hours of the morning. And Joseph, making myself redundant, that is I guess, a mission for me as an Agile coach. I want to leave a company, a team in a situation where they're no longer reliant upon me. And to that end, the way I do that is I perform ethical experiments on them. I'll maybe join a meeting or a ceremony that I would typically have facilitated, and I might just pretend I've got audio issues and just see what happens. Do they carry on without me? Do they do what they're intending to do? Do they even have the ceremony at all? I pretend I can't make it that day and just see if the ceremony goes ahead. There's lots of little ways of just gauging our team moving in the right direction. And it's okay if they aren't. It's just a little thing that I do. But anyway, if anyone who isn't familiar with my work or what I'm about, I'm very much a believer in making fun, allowing the workplace to be fun and using a little bit of creativity to do so. And that's where gamification comes in. Big believer in gamification. What I realized about a year ago, or just over a year ago now, I guess when the pandemic struck, everyone had always told me that co-located team was the golden way of doing things. It was the best way of getting results. And I thought long and hard, had I ever had a co-located team? And I realized, no, I really hadn't. I'd always had some element of a distributed working environment, someone located offshore, for example. And as a result, I had many years of experience that I could begin sharing with people, ways of doing things, ways of engaging people remotely. And that's where I guess the gamification side of things came in, alongside my passion for retrospectives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you folks a link to a Miro board. The intent behind this session is for it to be very interactive. I'm not someone who just wants to talk at people, not my intent whatsoever. So I would like you to engage with me as best you can. If everyone jumps onto that Miro board, we can begin. What I'll also do, if I have sharing privileges, I'll share my screen, so you folks can see. This is all about the power of gamification. Is anyone familiar with the quote, I believe it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, although may have had its derivations from Confucius. Tell me and I'll forget. Teach me and I'll remember. Involve me and I'll learn. This is the crux of why I gamify content, because people feel involved. And when they're involved, they're more likely to be engaged and learn about something, especially in this virtual world right now. Think how easy it is for you to be in a meeting and your mind just starts to drift away to something else. You get a distraction, an email, a Slack message, something pulls your attention away, especially if the meeting isn't keeping you engaged or isn't one where you're particularly required to be present in. And for me, involving people in the process, particularly on the teaching side of things, is so important. It's also something that people enjoy. So in terms of agenda, I'm going to talk you through why I gamify content. I want to find a little bit about you guys. I've kind of told you a little bit about me already. Enterprise coach, big believer in gamification, want to make myself redundant. I will then allow you to choose the games we're going to play. So there's a couple on offer today. What I do is I facilitate virtual games en masse, and I love exploring how to gamify techniques and concepts in different ways. Examples being technical debt, right? Technical debt's a tricky, fickle mistress to teach, to speak about, but there's a great way that you can introduce it to new people. And I used to do this face-to-face when we were allowed to do so, by having people move Postit notes from one side of the room to another, placing them on boards, and that would represent a bit of a workflow. And then you would start to introduce chairs in their path, physical barriers that would slow them down as they move through, and that would represent technical debt. And as the technical debt was building up, more and more chairs were getting in the path to the point where they were slowed down so much they couldn't progress any further. Then you look to encourage sustainable development practices where they deliver something in the workflow, but they remove a chair as they go along. They start to deliver improvements and fixing technical debt as part of their practices every iteration. And that I find is a great way. It's almost a great way of getting those light bulb moments in with people who haven't experienced it before. And it's particularly great with teaching those that are furthest removed from the scenario as well. It's wonderful playing a game with a board of directors to teach them definition of done and get them to throw paper airplanes around the office to conceptualize what it feels like to have something rejected because something hasn't been met definition of done, or the team hasn't been able to have that focus on quality. So as I said, we're going to get you to choose a game, we're going to play the game, and then I always aspire to leave you folks with some actual takeaways with any workshop or talk I do. Just as an example, I'm going to bring everyone's attention to where I am. You can see, these are just some examples of some of the gamified things I do. So I love the idea of just it being an arcade and everyone coming into the arcade and selecting games they might want to play. And I try and build the arcade concept around that. I'm basically a geek at heart. I love I've got my inner child showing, and I bring that to the workplace because people enjoy escapism, they enjoy having fun at work. So I love to create these different visual ways of teaching new concepts. We've got games here such as how to do story points by estimating different things. You've got games around experimentation and context switching. Anyway, why use gamification techniques? We are now here to keep things fresh, to keep things exciting. I mentioned involve people and they learn. It provides a more tangible experience. When you've got a physical experience that you can remember, that you can draw upon, that's has been kinetic somehow, that's embedded a bit more because you've been involved in it, it's easier to remember. So when someone has physically had to do something as part of the learning process, it makes it a bit more real and more tangible, rather than just being told about it or passively exposed to some sort of slide deck or otherwise. I mentioned engagement. People tend to enjoy learning and playing games. So because they're involved and they're engaged, they tend to learn better. It can provoke different thinking. Again, getting people up, moving about, getting people physically doing things can provoke different ways of thinking. And I always refer to examples of provoking different ways of thinking, the same way I do retrospectives. You could, rather than saying to someone, hey, what do we need to stop doing? You could use Queen the rock band as a theme for the retrospective, because everyone loves Queen. And you could be like, I want to break free. The song I Want to Break Free. You could play that in the background, and you could be asking the team, right, what's holding you back? What's shackling you? What's preventing you from making progress? So just a slight variation on a question there could provoke a very different response. The same goes for these sorts of games. They can provoke different thinking. And last of all, as I mentioned, work can be fun. So before we start with this, I mentioned I was looking for involvement from you folks. So by way of emoji, share how you personally feel about gamification. If you prefer to do so, you can share an emoji in the Zoom chats. You can use the emoji functionality in Miro. So if there's a little emoji app you can use, just add that onto this board here. Just make sure, if anyone hasn't used Miro before, make sure you've got the V or the little cursor selected. You press V on your keyboard, so it should be highlighted in blue. This will allow you to interact with the board and do things. And another note, if you're seeing lots of people's cursors flying around, go like this, you can hide them by pressing this button at the top. So I can see we've got our little party happy icon, got a little crazy one. We've got someone responding with a surprise face, people loving them, cool. And yeah, once you've done your emoji, share perhaps what Agile games you've played, or what serious games you may have played in the work context. You can double click any of those Postit notes and type in those any games you've played. So looking at just the emojis alone, I'm seeing the majority seem pretty positive.
Where do I get the emojis from?
So on the left-hand navigation panel, if you're seeing my screen here, there's little 3 dots, and you can just type emoji. And got it. Or you can scroll down and it'll be there.
Thank you.
So Agile Games, fruit sizing, yeah, it's a technique for story point estimation, a virtual scrum game, the paper airplane game. Love this one. I've always used this for teaching definition of done. And it's so much fun when it comes to a latter iteration where you get people to introduce some branding on this paper airplane. And so often they'll just go away, they'll draw the branding straight on the plane, and then they'll come and show it to you and say, is this good? And you say, well, that's not what I was looking for. And they have to start all over again because they haven't built in a feedback loop or applied Agile iterative principles. Very fun. Analyst estimation, yeah, common one. 2 truths and a lie. I don't think I've used that in the learning context, but I'm intrigued to hear more. Multitasking, yeah, I love using games to contextualize multitasking. Penny batches, yeah, the coin game is a very classic Agile game. Great way of emphasizing and demonstrating the difference between large batch style delivery versus smaller iterative delivery. And that's a particularly good one I have found with, again, senior people that haven't been exposed to Agile before, because it's a very tangible game that people can be literally flipping coins, and there's a competitive element to it if you've got multiple teams on the go. That was always a good icebreaker moment, not an icebreaker, a coin dropping moment, revelation. Right, so we've learned a bit about you folks. Time to choose a game. You will see on this section here, we have 2 games available. Agile Battleships and Outcomes versus Outputs. The way you choose your game tonight, and we'll go with the highest voted first. We might get time for both games. We'll see how things flow. You can grab these little Mario style coins. Again, this is arcade themed, and you can dot vote using those coins. You have 2 votes each. So you can interact with these coins by just left clicking and dragging them onto whichever game you're most keen to play. The one with the most votes we'll start with. Battleships, for context, is a game all about feedback loops and the importance of them. Outcomes versus outputs is exactly as it says. It's teaching the concept of focusing on outcomes versus outputs. And I can already see that one is taking a very large lead. Okay, looks like we have it. Outcomes versus outputs first. Right, so where we go now. If you see that arrow on that above that cupid, press that, and it's going to take you to the start of the game. And I can just bring everyone's attention here, to be honest. So this is a game that's adapted from David Barnholt, who originally shared this, A Beautiful Summer Meadow, in a blog a number of years ago. A Beautiful Summer Meadow is a great game for contextualizing outcomes versus outputs. Now, before I do any game, before I teach any new concepts, I always look to connect people to the subject matter. So with that in mind, I'd love for you to share on these Post-it notes. You can see a bit of a table here, lots of Post-it notes. What do you believe an outcome is? And what do you believe an output is? Share your thoughts on those Post-it notes. Share out loud if you prefer to do so, share in the Zoom chat, however you prefer to interact. Just let us know where you currently are with regards to those. Right, so an outcome is a happy customer. A customer excited about the product. A result, a valuable item, a delighted customer. So we've got a lot of customer centricity. I'm loving seeing this. An end state. What we deliver, valuable items, more market space, implicit hypotheses. An outcome is a visible result to a client or end user. Okay. How about outputs? What have we got there? A finished item of little value, information, tasks, burn up, velocity, lots of tasks, the artifact of an end state. Documentation. Numbers, quantity. Yeah, lots of different things for what an output is versus an outcome. So that's connecting us to the subject matter. With contextualize, we're talking about outcomes and outputs and the importance of those. What we want to do is we want to understand this from the context of software delivery or delivering products, delivering things. So we're going to play a game to do that. What I will do is bring everyone to here now. And how it will work is you'll divide yourselves up into groups of 4. Now we're going to play this game in silence. That's part of the beauty of it. But each team of 4 will have their own Miro board or space that they can do things in. Each team will be given a brief. You aren't to say to each other what's on the brief. Okay. So what I need you to do is if people can begin adding their names against these teams here, we've got Team Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, Link, Luigi, Zelda, Knuckles, and we're not going to have enough for everyone. I think by the looks of things, how many numbers do we currently have? 21. So we've got enough for 5 teams of 4. Yeah, 5 teams of 4 because we've got 20 participants. So if people can move their names, I can see a couple of people have joined Team Pac-Man. Someone's joining Team Knuckles. So double click these Post-it notes, put your name there. Once you've added yourself to your team name, on your little character icon, again, there's an arrow. So there's a Pac-Man character and he's got an arrow. If you follow that, you'll be taken to your own space to do something. You'll have a brief there that you as a team need to do. It involves drawing something. Again, we're not going to be sharing with each other what each team is working on. Some teams will have an output focused brief. Some teams will have an outcome focused brief. You may draw only using the pen functionality. So if I pressed P on my keyboard, I would start drawing like this. So you may only use the pen functionality within Miro. There's no shapes, anything else. As I said, once we've got everyone into teams, because there should be enough, as I said, for 5 teams by the looks of things, we'll then navigate to our individual spaces and go from there. If people prefer just to observe and interact, I will be sharing my, my screen is being shared. So I will tend to just dip in and out and just see how things are progressing. Each team will have a few minutes once they've navigated their area. And once I set a timer, each team will have a few minutes to draw their brief. We'll then reflect afterwards and see what's happened as a consequence of some teams having an output focused brief, some team having an outcomes focused one. May I ask, are there any questions before we start? Is anyone having any difficulty adding themselves to a team? Can I resend the Miro link? Absolutely. Janet, it's coming to you now. So Janet, I'm going to put you in Team Sonic. You should be landing on the Miro board in a moment. So I'm going to bring everyone to here. We should be here on the boards. Right. No questions? Nothing else? Everyone clear on what we're doing? Yes, that's how someone can see someone just drawing over Team Luigi. That's how you do it. Press P on your keyboards, or on the left-hand navigation panel, there is a pen icon here.
Chris, I need to better learn how to use Miro.
Sure. How can I help?
I just need to try it. That's all.
Okay. So don't worry too much. Yeah, it's a tool that is quite intuitive, but I appreciate that some people haven't used it before, can take a good time adjusting. It may just make sense for you to watch the game unfolds and observe what happens. If that's okay.
No, I'll give it a try. I'm just feeling awkward with it.
Don't worry too much. You'll still be part of a team. Okay. So I can see in Team Sonic, we have Maru, Frank, Janet, and JJ. In Team Pac-Man, David, G, Alexandra, Ron, and Cara. Team Link, Mona, Earl, Joseph, and Gopal. Team Luigi, Pablo, Roxana, and MW. So we've got 4 teams set up. If each person in their team now navigates to their space, so there is an arrow for Team Sonic, an arrow for Team Pac-Man, an arrow for Team Link, and an arrow for Team Luigi, you will then see your brief, okay? If people can just give me a hand or a wave or something to let me know that they are in their place accordingly. What I'll then do, great. What I'll then do is I'm going to start a timer. That timer will then tell you how long. You've got 3 minutes to draw to that brief. Don't start drawing until the timer starts. So anyone who started drawing is cheating. I'm going to have to redo that. I have to delete things now. My fault, I didn't clarify. Right, I've deleted those. There we go. So you're going to start fresh. Right, timer is starting. You have 3 minutes. You work in silence, and we'll see what happens as a consequence. 3, 2, 1, go. So for those following on my screen, you can start to see what happens. We've got a couple of teams, in Team Sonic working with an outcome focus brief. A couple of teams working to an output focus brief. I'm going to hide the cursor so that it can make it easier to see. Ooh, no, I'll just. For context, by the way, you can do this exactly the same game in person with paper. People crowded around a piece of paper, pens, drawing the same thing. It's usually funny to see what teams come up with. Two minutes left, folks. 2 minutes left. I wonder which team is going to produce the best picture. Mm-hmm. Half of your time is up. Less than 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. See, someone's cleverly using the drag and copy and paste functionality there. Slightly against the rules, but I didn't specify, so I'll leave you with that. Did say drawing only. Last 45 seconds then. How are we doing? Okay. I'm going to share all of this with everyone once we're up, once the time's up. Last 15 seconds. Time is waning. It's running out. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop drawing now. Right, let's have a look at what each team came up with. So, bringing everyone's attention to me, zooming into Team Sonic. Team Sonic were asked to draw a beautiful summer meadow with blue and red flowers and green grass, some cows, and birds under a shining sun. So we have a shining sun, we have some birds in the sky, we have some questionable cows. This one's pretty good. Questionable cows, but still cows, recognizable as cows. They have spots. We have some flowers, blue and red. Okay. Let's have a look at Team Luigi. Someone's added a cow emoji, slightly against the rules, but again, recognizable as a cow. We have a sun in the sky. We have got blue and green flowers. Okay. Now, let's take a look at Team Pac-Man. Team Pac-Man were delightfully given the brief. Draw a beautiful summer meadow with 10 blue flowers with 5 petals each, 5 blue flowers with 6 petals each, 13 red flowers with 6 petals each, 2 cows with 3 black spots, 1 cow with 5 black spots, 2 cows with 4 black spots, 2 birds to reside in the upper left-hand corner, 3 birds in the middle, 1 sun to the right with 5 sunbeams. And what happened? Okay, so we've got lots of flowers. I can't tell if they've got enough petals on each of them. That one does. Yeah, okay. Got some cows. I know this team were moving things around. Originally, they had some flowers up in the sky over here. And how about this one? Whoa, that's a bit messy. So this one, who is in this team? Who was in Team Link? Any volunteer? Who's going to own up to that? Mona? Was that you?
Yeah, I was there too.
You were there too.
Yeah, and I don't know why someone just started to. We were done with the blue, and then someone just started to make more blue. I was, oh my god, we need to stop this.
All right, okay. So any observations that we see, just as a snapshot, just very quickly, any observations we've seen as a difference between the output focused brief and the outcome focused one?
More work, more, let's say, like more work has been done. Maybe it's not organized. Everything is everywhere, right?
Okay. Anything else we've seen? I see someone was doing a practice cow up here. Right. So what I've observed from playing this game is typically what happens is the team that are given the output focus brief, this one, they get so focused on the detail that they forget what they're actually trying to draw. A beautiful summer meadow. It's literally in the title. And the consequence of that is you end up with flowers over here, cows in the sky. It doesn't end up being a meadow at all. It ends up being stuff, outputs just chopped in the middle there. Just done, because they get so focused on the detail that they forget about the outcome, what you're actually trying to achieve. Now, other things I've observed through playing this game with the outcome focus brief, sometimes teams will just come up with stuff that weren't even on there because it allows more creativity. So it says draw a beautiful summer meadow, but once they get done with that, I've seen them draw horses, sheep. They've just started creating what a meadow means to them. So what we have here, by having an output focus brief, so focused on the detail. It's basically in the delivery world as being given a solution predetermined. You're given exactly these things to deliver. And the consequence of that is people will just deliver exactly as you told them to do. They won't have any creative license to innovate, to do different stuff. And the consequence can be very limiting, and it can also be very demotivating. How enjoyable is it to just be so focused on this 30-page document and delivering every single specific piece to it and not feeling you have any autonomy or license to do otherwise? It's for me, this game is also a great way of demonstrating a self-fulfilling prophecy. If anyone's familiar with the story from Greek mythology, you had a sculptor king whose name eludes me right now. It will come back to me. But he basically sculpted this statue, Galatea, and prayed for it to come to life, and it eventually did. And it's also the Pygmalion effect and the Rosenthal effect, same thing, has been demonstrated in the working environment alongside a teaching environment to be a situation where someone is micromanaged and provided very clear and specific boundaries so much that they only behave in that way. And treat, this sort of thing, having so much focus on outputs, micromanaging someone so much to the point, can come at the consequence of people just behaving exactly as the parameters of the boundaries have allowed them to. Pygmalion, yes, David G. So that is the game. It was a very quick and easy one to just demonstrate outcomes versus outputs. At the end of every game, what I always do is do a bit of a debrief, a conclusion. Let's wrap up. How did it feel not being able to communicate during that game? What did you observe while playing the game? So any challenges you observed? How you can go back to using typing on Postit Notes. You don't have to draw, use the pen for this one. How can you focus on being more outcome focused? How can you be enabled to be more outcome focused? And what support do you think you need to be more outcome focused at work? To give more outcome focused work to people, to give them more creative license?
Well, I'll go then.
You can speak out loud. You can turn on Postit Notes however you prefer to do so. Do share.
Okay, I didn't. Okay. I felt like being a slave. Just give me, just execute, and also I had to keep control of myself, because whenever I started drawing something, somebody who was apparently interested in it just put his mouse right up there, so I couldn't keep drawing. Mm-hmm. And since I couldn't keep drawing, I had to stop, and then the person would leave, and then I could start drawing again, and then she would come back. And yeah, it was a bit interesting, his behavior.
So I don't always play this game without communication. Sometimes I inject it in just to see what happens, because it can be very chaotic. And it leads very nicely into the next game, which is all about feedback loops and the importance of having shorter, sharper feedback loops. So what have we observed through not being able to communicate? It wasn't efficient, got lost in the detail. One team felt it was fine because they were producing outcomes. Strange but effective. No alignment. People created together. There was freedom. Okay. But also didn't know how to help. Okay. What about observations? Again, focused on the details. Someone felt they were happy to be able to be creative. They found it great collaborating without talking. I'm increasingly enamored by the idea of silent retrospectives, doing retrospectives where no one actually speaks. They just interact with a virtual whiteboard, because the silence can create a focus. It can force a listening, because otherwise you don't interact, and it can help with scenarios where there are particularly dominant voices who maybe are accustomed to leading the conversation. Doing silent retrospectives and silent games like this can be a useful way of improving communications, interestingly. Output outperformed outcome, in your opinion? It can happen. This is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. Sometimes, yeah, you can have outputs, and certain teams may do very well and respond very well to delivering based on outputs. In my experience, the majority of people I've worked with prefer having autonomy rather than being given very, very clear, specific things and feeling like automatons just, you know, clearing Jira ticket machine. Feeling like a Jira ticket machine because all they're doing is moving one thing from a column to another.
Hey, Chris, sorry, I made some mistakes on mine, so I put them in the right columns. So you were reading something like freedom and it was not in the right place. So sorry.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Oh, I did think it was a bit strange. I mean, it does happen. Anything around what we can do differently? So what support do you think you could provide or do, what could you do differently? Because I'm always keen for people to think about how this might impact their working lives, you know, the teams they work with. Is this perhaps a game they want to use with their teams? Is there anything they could do differently to try and help their teams be more outcome focused? All right, so there's a lot of people talking about vision, focus, clear goals, yeah, repetition, make it a mantra, make it transparent, constantly visible. How often do teams make up a goal for the sprint and then they make it up at the start of the sprint, but then they never hear about it again till the end? Did we achieve our goal? Well, we didn't even see it. We weren't exposed to it. Same with retroactions. So often I see teams identify things from their retrospectives, but then they forget about them for a few weeks. And then you ask, well, how did you get on with them? Oh, well, we haven't done them because they weren't visible. I like this. Ask why I'm producing an output. I always implore people, if they're given something very, very specific and detailed, just to challenge it. Why have you been given something with that level of detail? Bring in the customer. Love that. The closer we can get to the customer, the better I feel teams will be. They will be enabled to continuously course correct to ensure they're delivering value. My personally favorite metric that I subscribe to is days since last user or customer engagement. And the way that works is it's not something like velocity or cycle time. It's, imagine you're in you're in like a power plant or somewhere where there might be a high focus on security and safety. And you have those running counters where it's say 80 days since last incident, for example. I'm imagining this, but it would work in reverse. So if you can keep that number of days since you last spoke with a customer as close to zero as possible, then you are probably going to be much more likely to produce something that they are looking for, something that's delivering value to them. Okay, so that is the conclusion of this game. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. What you'll have seen is in a very quick way, a demonstration of how I teach and use Agile Games to teach concepts. And it builds on the 4 C's. So you're connecting people to the subject matter. You are contextualizing why it's important. You're giving them some sort of concrete practice. So the game is all about some sort of practice. And lastly, conclusion, wrapping up. What have we learned? What have we discovered? What could we do differently? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I think we have time to play the other game. And this one, I'm just going to make it, I'm going to have you watching and I'll have everyone interacting, but we're not going to do it quite in the same way we did the last game. What I'm going to do is bring everyone to here. So same as we did before, connecting you to the subject matter. What is a feedback loop? And what examples of feedback loops do you have at work in the workplace? Retros, yes, my favorite of all ceremonies. Daily stand-ups, absolutely. Sprint review. Yeah, lots of the standard Agile ceremonies are absolutely feedback loops. Yeah, PI planning is a larger feedback loop, but across many teams usually. Yeah, kind of 3 monthly cadence. Scrum of scrums, code reviews, yeah, it's a feedback loop. Just walking over to your team, tapping them on the shoulder, having a chat. Backlog refinement, swarming, pair programming, lots of examples of feedback loops. And to be honest, that most of the answers there answer the question of what type of feedback loops do you have at work, so we don't need to go to that. Now, what can everyone, I think everyone needs to just look at Zoom now, because I'm going to be sharing my screen. Well, I am sharing my screen. What we're going to do is we're going to play this Battleships game. And I love this game for, as I mentioned, contextualizing the importance of feedback loops. The way this will work is we'll play 2 rounds of Battleships. If anyone isn't familiar with the game Battleships, it's that game where you are basically trying to sync your opponent's battleship by selecting grid references, A1 to A8. And there are, yes, you'll see the numbers on the board. The first round, you're going to have 30 attempts to sync these battleships. The challenge is you won't know whether you've hit anything or not. You're going to have delayed feedback. I will ask you at the beginning, as a team, to estimate how many ships you think you will sink. We'll then see what happens. We're then going to play a second round. And the second round, it works in the same way the real game works. You'll know instantly if you've hit something or not. And again, I'll ask you, how many ships do you think you'll sink this time round? And again, we'll compare and contrast the results afterwards. So the way it'll work, I'll start the game. You will see the grid on the screen, and people just need to call out and say grid references to me. I will press the button, and then we'll see what happens. Any questions?
What size are the ships?
You will see on the screen, someone's changed, oh, okay, or someone changed their background to Battleships then, I was very impressed. You will see on the screen, in fact, I'll just show you quickly, that I'll refresh the screen so you get a full timer. The size of the ships, the biggest one is 5 across. You have one that's 4, 3, 2 2s, and 2 1s. You have A8 to H8 as your options. You have 30 shots to choose in 5 minutes. Is that clear?
So,
don't start
total,
guessing yet. Don't start guessing yet, but I'm just checking clarity. Does everyone understand how the game works?
So total, there are 7 enemy ships.
7 enemy ships, yes.
And we have 7, also the 7. Oh, never mind. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I think there's 64 possible locations to shoot at. 7 total ships, 30 shots in total. How many ships do you think you'll sink in the first round?
Another question, Chris?
Yes,
so
you may.
Can the ships be oriented diagonally?
No, they're only oriented upwards or sideways.
And if you hit any one of the 5 squares of a 5 square long ship, you've hit it?
You have to hit every square of each ship to sink it entirely.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I sometimes forget that people didn't grow up playing this game. Just have a quick reference to the chat. I can see someone saying 2 or 3 ships. Someone said maybe 1. Any rise or fall on that? We're at 7?
7.
Mona, you think we're going to hit all 7?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Outlandish. I love the confidence though.
Why not?
So I reckon the average at the moment seems to be about 2. We've had a lot of 1s, 2 and 3. Should we go with 2? Let's go with 2.
I am voting for 0. Remember, this is
0.
no feedback. This is no feedback. There's no way you're going to know if you hit it once. So that's always how you determine what your next direction is whether or not there's a hit.
You are forgetting chaos.
However,
chaos
you get 30 shots.
Yeah, I just did a quick statistical computation. Just 30 shots over the number of I don't remember how many squares we had.
64 squares.
64, yeah. So, I mean, you gotta be very, very unlucky. Could happen to really hit 0.
Anyway, let's not overthink it. Let's go with an assumption of around 1 or 2, and let's see what happens. So the game is starting. Call out some references. We'll take turns. So everyone gets a go.
A1.
D4.
Right, I had A1, D4.
D4.
H3.
H3.
F4.
F4. You may as well draw a smiley face.
Why are we scattering the shots all over the place? We should be concentrating.
E4.
E4, okay.
B4.
B4, all right. Oh, sorry, that was C4.
Yeah, B4.
There we go.
T4.
C4 now, okay. Now we know we've possibly at least done a 5.
5D.
D5, all right. 22 shots to go.
A2.
A2.
A3.
A3.
A4.
A4.
D2.
18 to go.
D3.
E3.
G7.
E7.
No, G.
E3.
Oh, G7.
D7.
H1.
And
E3.
H1. E7. B3. D3.
A8.
A8. 12 to go. D7 or C7.
C7, yeah.
G5.
C5
G.
is that? Oh, G5, sorry. 10 to go.
Very, very, very.
F5.
F5, all right.
G6.
F7.
G6. I had G6, F7,
E5.
E5,
H1.
H1. You say H1?
Yep.
That's already done.
A6.
A6,
H1,
5 to go.
H8. H8.
H8,
H6.
H6.
Come-
Last 3.
D1.
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 Oh my
C-
God.
C1, last shot. Where's it going?
E7.
E8. Oh, okay.
A7.
You can confer if you want. Where do you want to go?
E8.
A7.
E8.
C8. Screw it.
Oh,
Screw it.
no.
C8. There we go. All right. Okay. How many do we think we've got?
He
You
was
still
right.
confident with 1 or 2?
Yeah.
4.
2.
Look at that.
Oh,
2.
Oh.
Wow.
2. Okay, so you sunk one of the 3s and one of the 1s. You almost had the big one, and there were a couple of other ones you got. Yeah, you were 1 away from sinking. That's not bad. 13 hits, 2 sunk. Right. Now, compared to the last round, in the next round, you will have the ability to see and hear, because it will make a bomb noise. You'll see in red when you've struck something. That will allow you a feedback loop. That'll allow you to adjust your course accordingly. First question though, how did it feel playing that last round?
Great.
it was a lot of fun because everybody had a voice. It was,
Everyone had a voice. That's a great thing. Everyone had a voice.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, Alex.
but
Yes,
also
it
demotivating because I am the one who stopped the chain that everybody was going after. At A5, I was the one who changed the column. So I kept the team from winning, from thinking 1.
Yeah,
All right,
so
so
you add.
you're feeling like you were at fault for something. Okay. How did it feel? You mentioned there was a motivational challenge there. Why was it demotivating?
It was just so random.
It was
Yeah,
random.
it's kind of blind. You don't know what you do, right?
It was chaotic. What was the consequence? We didn't really achieve that much. It could have been more delivered.
Well, somebody made a good point that we were scattering our shots all over, and maybe we should have been more concentrated.
Yeah. Okay. Question for you folks. What happens when we do this? This is a to-do list, right? What happens when we get to do this and just cross something off?
Done.
Focus on what's
Satisfying.
It's satisfying. It's cathartic. You get that
You're
little
focused.
you get that dopamine hit, and you get a positive energy. You complete something. It feels great. So the same goes when it comes to the sort of work we do in the knowledge working world. When we complete something, it feels good. When things carry over from iteration to iteration because they're not quite finished, that's frustrating. And not having a feedback loop built in to our ways of working can lengthen and can slow things down, can cause us not to complete things. We want to complete things. That's just how we as humans have evolved. We enjoy it. So that's why one of the reasons feedback loops are important. Now that we know in the next rounds, we have the ability to have a feedback loop to see our progress. How many ships do we think will sink this time?
all.
5.
All of them?
Yeah.
All of them.
That's bold.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's maybe half.
No team has ever sunk all of them. If you do that,
I say
you gotta
maybe
visualize.
I say maybe two this time, 2 or 3 this time again.
3 or 4?
Negative thinking.
4, okay.
4.
No, let's go
Or
for
we want to go with
4.
4. 4.
4 or
Sounds
5.
good. All right, let's go with 4. 4 is your estimate, okay? Do you want to have like a few moments to talk about your approach? You mentioned beforehand people were just scattering things. Have a little retrospective. Have a feedback loop of yourselves as how you want to approach this as a team. You know the rules this time. Do you want a minute or so to think about that?
Yeah, we know the ships are oriented either vertically or horizontally. So if we get a hit, we should think about following one of those two directions or both.
Yes. Agree.
I think there's 18.
Yeah, we have eight direction to follow if we get hit, right? I mean, depends on the situation, if it is a side or it's a middle.
There's a total of 18 bombs. So can we spread that out across the 64?
Chris, how many shots, how many bombs do we get this time?
You still got 30.
18.
No, 30. Still exactly the same as the last round. 30 attempts. 5 minutes
Yeah, but
to
there's
choose.
18. There's 18 hits, right, to get them all.
Yes.
I'm
There's
not very
18
good at my math, but I'm thinking that if we could break that down across the 64, then we have a potential of getting more. Who's good at math?
I'm good at math, but yeah, I can take care of math. Here's the thing. So I'm thinking the boat, they have like a 2. So we have 2 boat with 2. I don't know how to call this. Size 2, whatever.
Size.
And yeah, how we can call it, like
So I would call this big one like a frigate or an aircraft carrier. I call
aircraft.
these little ones like I don't know, mini battleships. These are like speedboats or something.
Those look like subs.
Yeah, submarines. The little ones are submarines.
Oh, summary.
This big one's an aircraft carrier. This one, these 4s and 3s are warships.
Destroyers.
And destroyers. There we go. We've got some names for them now.
Okay, so you're in a good point. You see that on the column F and G you have 4, but you see on column 7 on a row 7 we hit 2, and we were thinking that okay, this is the 2, but it was 2 of the 2 beginning, right? Beginning of 2 other boat. It was not whole boat. So we kind of need to think, even if we hit it left and right, maybe we should try up and down, see that, okay, if there is anything around, right?
Sounds logical. Should we go for it?
Well, why don't you separate, go from one, bomb 1 square and then go 2, so 2 steps. So there's always a step between them, because I think Chris said we're going to hear the noise, aren't we?
You'll always see it will turn red if you've hit.
Okay. So what I'm saying is we take, say you go diagonally, so you go A1, then you go down to C3, and basically you do 4 across, you do 4 up, 4 down, and I think that gives us a little bit more likelihood of hitting something. And once we hit something, then we can focus on that. Just
sounds
an idea.
Sounds like sound logic. Should we go for it?
Yep. We only have 3 minutes left. Or
Right. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So 30 attempts. Off we go.
E2.
A1.
A1. Nothing.
D5.
B or D?
D.
D5. No.
B2.
Bang.
There you go.
Yep. So then let's go B3.
Bang.
B4.
B1.
B4 first. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
B1.
So what was that? C1?
Is that done?
That one's done now. 3 one's done.
It's about
F6.
F6 now. No.
C2.
C2. No. Just checking the chat. Okay, someone's got to drop.
E2.
E2.
D as in David.
Oh. Yes.
Oh, good.
D3.
Yeah.
B1.
D1.
D3.
Bang.
E3.
Four.
D4.
B4, yeah.
2 ships down.
Ooh.
19 to go. 19 shots left.
F4.
F4. Nah.
F2,
Nice.
Yeah.
F1,
G2.
G2.
Nope.
E2,
Yeah, nice.
3 ships
Nice.
down.
All right.
H5.
B7.
H5,
B7.
B7,
Why? B7.
D8.
H8.
was that A8 or H8?
D8. D
Oh,
like
D-
Doha.
D8. No.
H8.
Let's
H8,
F7.
F7,
H3.
H3,
Around it somewhere.
eight left.
H1,
H1,
No.
B6.
Hold on.
B-
6. Okay.
Yeah, B6.
B7.
Go for it.
5A.
B7.
A5,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you go. Woo!
B5,
B5,
Now let's go up. It should be a large one,
Down.
the biggest one.
It
Are we
can be
confident?
2
Are,
also.
are we
so
confident?
Who's gonna take responsibility now?
Yeah,
Go for it if
go
she
up and
asks for
down.
it. Let's go.
Who-
I would prefer down, but yeah.
Our last shot. Let's see what they
You've
do.
got 5 shots left.
A6,
A6, always
Oh,
gone for it.
nice. It's nice.
7.
No.
Oh,
Go for it.
4.
A3,
Good.
A2.
yeah.
Yeah.
3-pointer right on the buzzer.
Right on the buzzer, swish. Right,
Nice.
timed out. So you hit
Oh.
4. So you did 1 more hit, but you got 2 more things completed. Remember, we only count things that are actually completed.
Can you
How's
go
that
back to
round?
sorry, can
Sorry.
you go back to the board?
I can't now, I don't think. It will just restart it again. Sorry.
No problem.
It won't let me go back, you see, otherwise it will restart. Anyway, the consequence was you took a little bit longer, you got more hits and you sunk more things, you completed more things. Question is, how did that round feel comparatively?
Still jumping around.
It's a bit organized.
A little bit
Putting more
strategic.
attention than randomness, maybe a little bit. Kind of.
More strategic.
A little more strategic. Did it feel better, more motivational because you completed more things?
Yes,
Yeah.
also we were communicating a lot more.
I did hear more communication. One thing I've observed some teams do when playing this game is rather than calling out what they learned quite quickly is saying D4 could be confused with B4 or C4. So they started using Charlie 4, Delta 4, etc. So they learned how to communicate in a way that sped things up as well. In my experience when playing this game, it's just a very, very quick way of emphasizing why we have feedback loops, why we build them in. The consequence of this is it feels better, we're more likely to produce better results, and that's what we're looking for essentially. Conscious of time, I just want to leave you folks with some actionable takeaways. So back to the Miro board, again, showing my screen. If anyone's still on the Miro board, you can see there is lots of resources out there for using serious games for teaching concepts. So there's tastycupcakes.org. There is my own website. I have lots of free templates on there for Agile Games, Play 14, and also the Miroverse. There's plenty of games there. I want to highlight it doesn't work for everyone. Some people don't resonate particularly well with games. They may prefer reading things because they're more visual, or they may prefer consuming content or in an audio way, so they prefer audio books and things. So in my experience, they work very well for getting people involved, for keeping them engaged, but it should be supplemented with other teaching styles as well. I mentioned the 4 C's. I use that to build out any topic I teach, to introduce the concept to why it matters, to contextualize why it's important, to give a bit of concrete practice, and obviously to reflect on conclusions, what it matters, what it means for the workplace. You can extend engagement outside of just teaching concepts and learning. You know, you could immerse teams in their own language. You can celebrate their microcultures. You can build in fun to the workplace. I do lots of themed retrospectives. If anyone's familiar with them, I do that because it keeps people entertained. People enjoy it. They look forward to the next retrospective. And the consequence of that is that they tend to be happier, and happier people usually produce better results also. And lastly, humans, they love escapism. There are movies and books and things that are multi-billion-dollar industries because we like to escape reality, and games are the same thing. They're a way of having a little bit of fun. You really don't have a lot to lose by trying it. In terms of resources that I can leave you folks with, if you'd like to, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I share lots of things around gamification, retrospectives, teaching concepts, Agile in general. I have a YouTube channel, similar. There's lots of recordings of me doing these games there. My website has all free content, including almost 50 themed retrospectives now. So you have access to that, and I can share some of these links in the chat. And I also host a meetup of my own where you do teach these games and encourage others to come along and share games as well. It's called the Agile Arcade, runs once a month. Very conscious of time, if you will indulge me in the interest of improving my own workshopping skills, and it wouldn't be me without retroing my own workshop. So if you will enlighten me with any thoughts you have on this bullseye style visual here, you can share on the Post-it notes, just drag them in, anything you particularly liked about this session, anything you'd like to see more of, or any suggestions for things I could try. I will always take any feedback on. It's always welcome, even if you didn't enjoy the session.
Christopher, you mentioned a monthly session that you do. When's that?
I'll share the meetup link. I'll share all my links in the Zoom chats.
Great.
It's the next one will be August sometime. Again, that one's all around this, exactly what you've seen today, Agile Games for teaching concepts. With that in mind, and with any feedback you're sharing, it's always appreciated. I'll hand back to the host for tonight for any closing things they need to share. If we have any of the hosts left. I'm not sure, but those links are coming in the chat in a moment.
There's one more thing I noticed during the group work, Chris. Somehow the group decided to have a rolling, that people would take turns, a kind of democracy establish itself on its own without anybody requesting. So I would assume it doesn't happen in all teams, but this group did it.
You're right, it does not happen in all teams. It can very much be one where people do take over, dominant voices, dominant hierarchies happen. It's something that in this game in particular, you can see because there's a time pressure. People feel that they have to respond very quickly, and people also get excited and they speak perhaps out of turn. Sometimes teams just naturally fall into a rhythm. It also depends on the size of the audience. You know, if this is a team of 6 I was doing with this, it would be easier for them to go, right, this name, this name, this name, then this name if they remember the order. But with a group of this size, it can be a bit, oh, I'm just going to say a name, I'm just going to say a number, I'm going to say a number. And then people speak over each other. And then I'm like, okay, could you repeat that? And it does happen. Right. Largely good feedback from the board there. So I'm glad to hear it. Glad you found it engaging. Yes.
Question. I kind of got the same principles as you as going in and trying to get out, basically get the teams to run by themselves. How do you introduce that concept when you're first starting a gig?
How do I introduce the concept of me trying to replace or make myself redundant?
Yeah. Do you do it from the start, or do you wait a while?
I do. I mean, if anyone has seen any of the content I share, I'm very open about what my values are. And they're things like being open source always, nothing's behind a paywall, learn fast, learn often. And one of them is make myself redundant. So I'm very open about that right from the off. I am not there to keep myself there forever. I want to remove myself from the equation. And to me, a measure of success as an enterprise coach or anyone coaching is to enable the team to not rely on me anymore. Now, some teams take longer to get there, and that's okay. Sometimes what may happen is you start with a team and you're working with them quite rigorously for a while, but then it gets to a point where you can step away and you might be working with multiple teams. It depends on their maturity. I am also a fan of, in the same way we do kind of health checks with the squads, there's ways you can do health checks to see if they're getting value from your coaching. And applying that kind of mirror internally as well, getting the feedback from the team. is this working for you? Where do you need help with? It very much depends on the team. Some teams have never done Agile before. They need to be shown what good looks like, or shown a starting point that then they can learn from. Some teams might have worked with Agile before, and they might just need a few tweaks here and there. They might just need some observation. And some teams may have been working with Agile for years, and they just might need a couple of observations here and there, a couple of experiments that you might have seen elsewhere that they could try, and you're just kind of fine tuning or honing what they're already doing.
Yeah, thank you, because that's my principle too, and sometimes it's hard to kind of express that because people or companies just expect you to be there until they say, cut. So it's good to hear someone else's same opinion. Thank you.
No problem. So I've shared all the links. Hopefully that's useful for you folks. It was a pleasure workshopping you, gaming with you today. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions if anyone has any more questions. Otherwise, I'm very conscious that for your time zone, for most of you, it's still your working day. So,
Thank you, Chris. That was great.
no problem. Good to speak to you, some of you in person. So I know I'm connected to some of you already on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Great session. Yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. You can go to bed now.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to go out for a walk.
Cheers, man.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
See ya.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, Chris.
Wonderful day, everyone.
Great session.
Well, Chris, may I ask you one question?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my question is, if suppose somebody like me was working in supply chain management or business process reengineering, right? How do we apply this agile methodology, for the areas like, business process reengineering?
So you're still trying to move towards an outcome, right? You're still trying to deliver a change, something different. So there's no reason you cannot break that change into smaller pieces and have a team working on those iteratively. Okay? By working on them iteratively, you're de-risking it from being this large waterfall batch style thing, and you're delivering change incrementally, and importantly, allowing the team to reflect on progress and continuously course correct. And this is what feedback loops are all about. It's a scenario where, rather than the old way of doing things, where you might build something and only test it when everything was built and then only release it once everything was tested, you are able to finish things on an incremental basis and reflect on how that's going. And building in these feedback loops allows the team to say, right, are we still heading in the right direction? And if we're not, what can we do differently to move in that direction? So I still, agile concepts are not things that are limited to just software delivery. You can lose weight in an agile way if you want. You could say, right, my goal is to lose 10 pounds. How do I lose 10 pounds? Well, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to mind what I eat. I'm going to exercise a few times a week, right? There's ways you can break that down. And then that basically becomes your things that you focus on doing in a week. And then you just retrospect with yourself. You go, right, on a daily basis, you note down, have I achieved that? Have I achieved those things? At the end of the week, you might say, what worked for me? What didn't work for me? What could I try differently? So you've basically taken a non-software delivery thing and you've applied agile principles, quick, short delivery, feedback loops with yourself, and broken it down in a more manageable way, and enabled inspection and adaptation. And you can see how that progresses. If you are moving in the right direction, you weigh yourself a week later. I've lost a few pounds. Great. What did I do that helped me achieve that? If I didn't, what could I do differently that might help me achieve that? Same applies. You can apply it to anything, really.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, only when you have to take a macro analysis, of business processes or, performance metric, maybe, you'll have a different approach. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for sharing your thought. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, this is what I like about these games, is that you can still feel so connected to it, and it doesn't feel like work sometimes. And because it's playful, you could literally do these games for hours. Now, I wouldn't do that. I would always build in breaks, right? So this is like an hour workshop usually. So I would do an hour, then I might get a 15-minute break, then I might play a next game, and it's just constant energizing way of doing it, rather than the alternative, which I'm sure we've all experienced in the past. You're being presented slides, and you get tired, and you switch off, and you stop absorbing the information. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to head off. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, folks.
Yep. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye.
Wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Gopal.
Hey, just before you close the call, do you have at hand the link to your YouTube channel, so I can watch previous recordings?
Yes, we do have access to the previous, a link to the previous recordings. And my apologies if I may ask, is it Maru?
Yeah, it's Maru. Let me turn on the camera shortly so that you see me, because I'm trying to save.
Sure. Maru, let me see how we can get it. I wish Gopal didn't leave quickly.
Jasper, I think you need to stop recording now.
Oh, so I thought you already stopped. Because